G'day everyone, welcome back to another weekly tipping video on the channel. So going to be going over my tips for round 2 of the 2025 AFL season. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you do go and to enjoy today's video. And let's get straight into it. Okay, my tips from the previous round of round 1. I think we can safely say the true opening round to an AFL season with 9 games. Got myself a 7 out of 9, so I'll definitely take that. The tips we did get wrong was tipping the Blues, but there's no shame in that. This was just one of the most unbelievable turnarounds I've seen in quite some time. It was a tremendous win from the Tigers. Really put the Blues under the pump, and one of the upsets for the ages, no doubt. And yeah, put the eggs in the Fremantle basket and should have just waited and seen because, yeah, the Cats absolutely clawed them down to the category. So the 2 tips I did get wrong there, but the Hawks backed them in. Lions, it was a close game this one, the grand final rematch. The Dogs over North Melbourne. The Pies against Port Adelaide felt confident in a bounce back. The Crows smashed the Saints at home. The Giants, I was very close with going to Melbourne and they were leading for more of this game. But what an unbelievable comeback that was from the Giants' 𝗬𝐼𝐵 And the Suns, a real statement win away in the West. Let's have a quick look now at the tipping competition leaderboard update after round 1. There was one person, 𝐓𝐡𝐞 who did get every tip right, and that's including tipping Richmond. So fair play to you, my friend. And as for who is leading the comp, it is Shannon Humphries with a total score of 18. Let's begin with the tips for round 2. We start with the Thursday night game, Carlton versus the Hawks at the MCG. On paper, one of the marquee fixtures, but it isn't looking like it. Form-wise, the Blues off just one of the more embarrassing losses of the club's history, especially in the 21st century, or at least the last decade, going down to a Richmond side that predicted, well, a lot predicted not to win a game this year. They just got totally flustered by the Tigers' forward half pressure. The same issues arose, just the ball movement wasn't looking great with their connection. And geez, when the ball hit the deck in the back 50, they looked at absolute sea. Meanwhile, for Hawthorn, they're travelling well. They've started off the season 2-0, and they're just looking like a good, well-oiled machine football club with how they're playing. The ground level game's looking dangerous once again. They're just a really high chemistry side. They're moving it well. They're getting the right numbers to contests. And their ball skills have definitely been a positive too. They've been able to slice up the Swans and, of course, the Dons last week in transition. Heading into this game form-wise as the deserved favourite. But looking at Carlton, if there any chance here, the Blues have really got to bring back that strength of their scoring from stoppage. They're very good at that. But there needs to be better connection up forward because the Hawks have been defending really well these first 2 weeks. They've got to stretch that tall defence too if 𝐼𝐶𝐞 is to come back in and really clunk those marks forward of centre. I'm just finding Hawthorn here is just hard to go against. They were well beaten, to be fair, around the footy against Essendon last week, but just when the ball hit the ground on the outside, they just used it so well and totally outdid the Dons with their ball movement. And I could definitely see the same for Carlton here. Similar to Essendon, their connection up forward just isn't looking great from what we saw last week. So could definitely see a bounce back for the Blues, but I'm going to be backing in the Hawks here. I just think the form is looking good and I reckon they can go 3-0. We'll tip the Hawks in this one by 20 points. Next game up, Friday night footy, we have the Dogs taking on the Pies at the MCG. So I'm pretty sure this is a milestone year for the Dogs, so they'll be known as 𝐓𝐴Tscray for this game, I'm pretty sure. And they've got a new logo and all that. But they got the job done over North Melbourne last week. Even with their outs, they found a way. But they had some nice inclusions into that midfield that definitely looked pretty schmick. Joel Fraser moved in there, had around 28 touches and a goal. Matt Kennedy was on one of the best on ground for the Dogs as well. And just totally outdid North with their ball movement. Sam Darcy clunked plenty. Norton got on the score sheet as well. Their tools just have to be the influence for this game coming up against Collingwood because they bounced back tremendously against Port Adelaide. Just brought back their energy, you know, under the bright lights of the MCG. That's where they play their best brand. And Dan Houston with his first game was arguably best on ground. Their pressure was absolutely top notch. They totally outdid Port around the footy and just gave them no time on it. When they got that exit hand pass out, they were away and gone. So the Dogs got to be a lot more accountable than what Port showed last week in the trenches. So if they're able to outdo the Pies around the footy and really get that prowess up forward with their marking targets, you know, there could be a sneaky chance here, but I just feel like Collingwood, from what they displayed last week, that's going to give them the energy, that's going to give them the momentum heading into this game. With the Dogs outs as well, I still think Jones is around 1 to 2 weeks away. They won't really be getting anyone back in here. So yeah, for me, Collingwood will get the job done here over the Dogs. Just yeah, have the doubts with the outs. Rhymes there a bit with the Dogs. So yeah, the Pies for me to win this one. We'll go them by 18 points. Saturday games now. First one up, 1:20 p.m. We've got the Dons taking on the Crows at the MCG. Really intriguing matchup because the Crows don't normally play well against the Dons, and the Crows haven't won in the MCG, I think, since 2017. And when you look at Essendon, there's a lot of effort for not much reward. So the upside's there, considering what they did to Hawthorn. Like, they weren't great at their connection, but they won the inside 50s. They won their contested count. They were great in the clearances. They're good on the inside. It's just when the ball went outside of the stoppage, they just were totally outdone by Hawthorn. And that's where the Crows could really outdo them, because they looked schmick at the Adelaide Oval last week. When they got that exit hand pass, they were gone. Just their fast hand pass game totally outdid the Saints, and that could just certainly be the case here against Essendon. Ridley out with concussion will hurt them down back, no doubt, when you look at Taylor Walker and especially Fogarty 𝐓𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐴𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 definitely expect 𝐼𝐴 to have a big game and kick a couple. Clean bill of health though for the Crows, so they're in good spirits, good morale I think after their big win against the Saints, and will definitely want to play their best brand. Really excited to watch this game as a neutral because just a lot of positivity from both these sides. There's upside in Essendon with the good things they did last week against Hawthorn, but with Adelaide they were great, but you know, dismantled Saints side, predicted bottom 4, how they go against a bit of a tougher opponent interstate. Really tough game to pick. I like the Crows here, but I'm also liking Essendon a little bit more. I think they can get a bit of an upset win here and really impress. Adelaide's defence still one of the weaker areas, I think, with their game, so that's where Essendon could really do them with some better connection inside 50, but could go either way. A bit more love for the Dons. So we'll go Essendon here in a really good game. I think they'll win a close one here by 7 points. Then next up, we've got a side that was the most disappointing last week versus the opposition, which was the most promising of last week, Port Adelaide and Richmond. This one at the Adelaide Oval, so you see that fixture right off the bat. You think Port Adelaide surely bounce back here. And when Port have a terrible loss usually and they're written off a little bit and they have doubts, they usually come out and really smash it. We need to see more of Richmond. It was a tremendous win. Unbelievable how they have turned that game around. The mental toughness is there from that first game. They were down by 40, 50 odd points, but they found a way. Didn't have the team on paper compared to the Blues, but it was just all about effort, you know, forcing turnovers and even winning outnumbered contests. So could they do that against Port Adelaide? They were terrible defensively and totally outdone off the spread from the Pies. So yeah, if the Tigers can bring a bit of pace, their win last week reminded me of the Tigers of old, of how they got that chaos footy going, long and direct. Lynch is going to be probably suspended, or I think the suspension will be upheld. It still is, I think, in deliberation at the time of recording. But I just don't have the confidence to back in Richmond here. They are still probably going to be a bottom 4 side for the most part, but hey, can they shock the world? I just think Port Adelaide, better side on paper, and you know they'll get a good home crowd, I think, at the Adelaide Oval. And yeah, they should really be bouncing back in this one and be a lot more tougher in the contest, unlike last week. So Port to bounce back here and win this one. I think 𝐓𝐴𝐥𝐿 𝐼𝐴, but they'll run away with it with their midfield and forward half class, and we'll go with them by 22 points. And then for Saturday night footy, you've got the Saints with their first game at Marvel taking on the 𝐓𝐴𝐥𝐿, 7:35 p.m. Yeah, geez, I looked pretty ordinary last week against Adelaide. Ross Lyons said he wants to bring heavy attention with just pure pressure and ferociousness around the footy. And that's what they were somewhat able to do, but they just got totally outdone when the ball exited congestion. Ran off their feet by a really fast-looking Adelaide side, and that's exactly what the Cats did to Fremantle. They totally outdid them off the spread, and their front half pressure was extreme. I think they outdid Fremantle by around 20 tackles, 20 tackles being in the forward 50 alone. It was some great pressure they applied. Most likely getting some reinforcements though, the Saints. They're looking like they'll get Liam Henry and also Mitch Owens back for this game, so a bit of more firepower for the ball. Probably keep Max Hall in there though. He looked great on debut. So because of the contrast of difference from both teams last week with how they played, it's just hard to go with the Saints here. Like, they could get a bit of a resurgence going and maybe win a quarter and bounce back well, but I just think the Cats look like the far more advanced team. Back in the Catters here at Marvel Stadium. We'll go with them in a pretty convincing win by 30 points. And now for the Sunday games, we start on the Sunday, 1:10 p.m, Brisbane taking on West Coast up at the Gabba, so this will be their flag unfurling game, finally back at home with unfortunately the Cyclone hitting during opening round, so they'll get their chance. But yeah, a real gutsy win it was against the Swans. They had things not really go their way with Lohmann going down, and unfortunately 𝘼𝐴𝐴𝐿 getting another concussion late. But they found a way to win, and that's what good sides do. Their ball movement was taken away for the most part against the Swans, but their midfield gainers tendency as the game grew on, and Zach Bailey was a real game changer for them forward of the ball. And playing West Coast too were just absolutely disgraceful. Let's be real here against Gold Coast. A side that weren't great away from home, but you could just see the gulf of difference of the quality of lists on paper between Gold Coast and West Coast. Their midfield belted them. They got outdone, forward of centre, outmarked. McGovern was getting honestly well beat by Ethan Reid as well, and Edwards struggled quite a bit too against King. It's a pretty straightforward tip for me here. West Coast were diabolical in their contested game, and I think Brisbane will flex their muscles here. Just far too good, I think, form-wise and on paper. So yeah, you never know. Eagles might start off well, but it's just hard to see much of a result falling in their favour here. We'll go Brisbane, win this one well, and we'll go with them by 50 points. And at 3:20 p.m, we do have North Melbourne taking on the D's at Marvel Stadium. North, there was some positivities from last week's hit out against the Dogs, but ultimately what let them down again is just sort of like the little things a wee bit. I thought they just weren't really accountable in a lot of the Dogs' transition plays, and that's what cost them. They had a lot of just, not committing to enough numbers to the contest and just letting goals out the back, and their foot skills, a big letdown too. They kicked some nice goals off transition, but at the same time, they left a lot of opportunities on the door. So it's a game where, honestly, it was in the balance. They really could have won. But yeah, can they lick their wounds and have a good hit out here against Melbourne, who, yeah, definitely look a lot more stronger than last year. They narrowly lost against the Giants, but they were impressive. It was a mixture of their youngsters like 𝐼𝐴𝐿𝐼𝐶, great on debut. Windsor looked exciting with ball in hand, but Petrarca, he looks to be back at his best. I thought he was very strong through the midfield. North might be a slim chance of bringing back in Charlie Comyn for his first game of the season, so that would definitely give him a bit of stability down back. They did lose narrowly to a Bulldogs side, but it was a pretty depleted Bulldogs side, so how will they fare against a bit more of a stronger Melbourne team? From what Melbourne showed last week, though, they're going to be breathing fire, dropping that close one. A game where they were leading, I think, for more of the match, so I feel this one will be pretty even throughout, but yeah, the contested game, Melbourne looked fairly strong, so I think that could outdo the Roos, and they'll find a way to win this game. Close game, I reckon. We'll go the D's by 2 goals. Which leaves the final game of the round, Fremantle taking on the Swans at Optus Stadium, 6:10 p.m. It's a massive game and massive ramifications for the loser of this match. Both teams starting off their season without a win. Fremantle, geez, they want to bounce back. It was a poor showing against the Cats. They just didn't look bothered to defend at all. Geelong zipped past them with their ball movement, and they just stifled from that front half pressure the Cats did provide. They just couldn't get the game on their terms, and that third term, though, was special. How about that? 𝐵𝐻𝐻 kicks 4 goals, and Strong and Brayshaw really get going. I definitely expect to bounce back here. It's their first game at home as well, so they're going to get a pretty good support, you'd think. They will get a few reinforcements too. I'm pretty sure Walters and especially Shea Bolton will be playing his first game for the club, so those are some massive ins. Whilst for the Swans, they will be getting an out of 𝐼𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻, he's gone down with, unfortunately, I think another hamstring problem. So that's just a huge one. They'll probably have to float McCartan back in defence and perhaps bring in Hayden McLean, who could definitely help pinch hit as that second ruck. Sydney have done a lot right to kick off the year. They honestly could be 2-0 if just a few things went their way, but the little things have hurt them, especially their transition and ball movement just isn't looking as sharp as it usually is. They've had some costly errors that have led to goals as well. So you'd think eventually their first win would come soon. They're going to be fired up, you'd think, still not having a win next to that win column. With 𝐼𝐿𝐼𝐻 going out and a few wins coming in for Fremantle, and they're playing in Perth at home too, big support. I'm expecting a bounce back here for the Dockers. I think this one will be close again, but Fremantle, I think they can outdo the Swans in that contested game. And yeah, 𝐻𝐻𝐿𝐼𝐻, Amos, I feel like I can get that edge over the Swans in the marking game forward to centre. And Shea Bolton, very good against the Swans usually, so I think he can break the game open too on his first game. We'll go the Dockers in this one. Don't mind the Swannies here for a bit of a bounce back, but yeah, I think Fremantle home just clinches it for me. So the Dockers win a close one here by 8 points. So overall, they were my tips for round 2 of the 2025 AFL season. So remember, just the 8 games for this week with GWS and Gold Coast having a bye. Let me know down below in the comments your tips. Are you going with any upsets here? It feels like there could be a few sprinkle in here, but there are at the same time a lot of one-sided matchups. So I think it will be sort of like the previous week where we'll see some pretty obvious tips getting correct here. But that's it from me, everybody. Hopefully you did enjoy, and until next time, I'll talk to you later. See you later, fellas.